accountability that the American people demand and deserve. In recent history, Democrats inflicted much damage on the credibility of congressional investigations by peddling the Russian collusion hoax. But this committee, under this majority, will not pursue such witch hunts based on manufactured allegations, innuendo, and no real evidence. Today, the House Oversight Committee will examine over 24 pieces of evidence revealing Joe Biden's corruption and abuse of public office. This includes emails, text messages, bank records, and testimony of Biden business associates. We will hear from legal and financial experts about this evidence and crimes that may have been committed as Joe Biden was sold around the world. The House Oversight Committee, along with the committees on the Judiciary and Ways and Means, will continue to follow the money and the evidence to provide accountability so that Americans know their public offices are not for sale. I now yield to Jason Smith, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. Yesterday, the Ways and Means Committee released new documents showing President Biden was not just aware of his son's business dealings, but he was connected to them. In a newly released message to a Chinese business executive, Hunter Biden mentions preserving the, quote, keys to my family's only asset. That asset, Joe Biden. New evidence released in response to questions raised by members of the committee on both sides when Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, the two IRS whistleblowers, testified in July, paints a disturbing picture of a revolving door between Joe Biden's office and Hunter Biden's business partners. According to a worksheet provided by IRS whistleblower Ziegler, then Vice President Biden's April 2014 official visit to Ukraine occurred only days after a series of White House meetings with Hunter Biden and his business associates regarding Ukraine. Shortly after Joe Biden returned stateside, the Ukrainian company Burisma announced Hunter Biden's appointment to its board. New evidence provided shows Hunter Biden using his father's position to gain favor with billionaire Miguel Alemán, including having Joe Biden host them at the White House in February of 2014 at the vice president's residence alongside Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim in November of 2015, and then in 2016 using Air Force Two to shuttle Hunter Biden and his business associate to Mexico City. Whether it was lunches, phone calls, White House meetings, or official foreign trips, Hunter Biden cashed in by arranging access to Joe Biden, the family brand. The Biden family and their associates received millions in payments from foreign sources, including from Russia, China, Ukraine, Romania. In one email, Hunter Biden even bragged that he cut a deal for $10 million from just one company for, quote, introductions alone. And yet the DOJ wanted to keep the spotlight as far from Joe Biden as possible. One of the items we released yesterday was an IRS interview with James Biden, the president's brother, in September of 2022. The agency was barred in the interview from asking him about Joe Biden and about whether Joe Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's deal with a Chinese energy company. And when Hunter Biden had his tax liability of over $2 million mysteriously paid for by a Democrat Party donor named Kevin Morris, who he barely knew, something IRS investigators saw as a possible campaign finance violation, Assistant U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf said she did not want any of the agents to look into the allegation. On the board are notes Agent Shapley took from that meeting. He notes that Wolf told investigators that she was not, quote, personally interested in pursuing it. This is the same attorney, Wolf, who in an email we released yesterday responded to IRS investigators seeking approval for a search warrant with, quote, there should be nothing about political figure one in here, that being a reference by definition of Joe Biden. The Biden family sold access to Joe Biden's power, and the Biden Justice Department protected the Biden brand. We must continue to follow the facts. I yield to Representative Jordan.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. This is a tale as old as time. Politician takes action that makes money for his family, and then he tries to conceal it. Never forget fundamental facts. Hunter Biden gets put on the board of Burisma, gets paid a lot of money. Hunter Biden's not qualified, fact number 2, to sit on the board. Not my words, his words. He said he got on the board because of the brand, because of the name. Fact number 3, the executives at Burisma asked Hunter Biden to weigh in and help them with the pressure they are under from the prosecutor in Ukraine. Fact number 4, Joe Biden goes to Ukraine on December 9th, 2015, gives the speech attacking the prosecutor that starts the process of getting that guy fired. Those facts, by the way, are consistent with what the confidential human source told the FBI, and the FBI recorded in the 1023 form, the same form that the Justice Department didn't want to let this committee see. And all those facts, all of that was further confirmed yesterday with the information that the Ways and Means Committee released from the whistleblowers Shapley and Ziegler. Here's a communication from Hunter Biden to an executive with Burisma. Devin and I do feel comfortable with Blue Star strategies and the ability of Sally and Karen to deliver. Hunter Biden put Burisma in touch with Blue Star Strategies. What were they going to deliver? Well, that was in a communication released yesterday as well. U.S. officials in Ukraine and in the United States need to express support for Burisma and Nikolai Zlochevsky to the highest level decision makers, the president of Ukraine, the president's chief of staff, and the prosecutor general. That's what they were going to deliver. And were they successful? The Interior Minister confirmed that Zlochevsky is no longer wanted. We won in less than a year communications between the folks at Blue Star and Eric Sherwin, who was Hunter Biden's business partner. Awesome work. Congratulations to you guys. Those are the communications. That's what they got done. And remember, when this happens in October 2016, when the pressure is taken off, the case is dropped against Zlochevsky, this is the second prosecutor. Joe Biden fired the first one. The second prosecutor comes in, drops the charges. That's exactly what they wanted done. And the final step is the Biden Justice Department tries to sweep it all under the rug. They slow walk the investigation. They let the statute of limitations lapse for the most important years, 14 and 15, the Burisma years when all that income's coming in. They try to put together this sweetheart deal and get it past the judge. And we learned yesterday in the search warrant examining Hunter Biden's electronic communications, they weren't allowed to ask about political figure 1. Political figure number 1 is the big guy, is Joe Biden. And they would have gotten away with it all. They would have gotten away with it all except for 2 brave whistleblowers who sat in those seats 2 months ago and told their story. And their story has stood up. 2 brave whistleblowers and a judge in Delaware who said, we're not going to let this happen. That's why we're here today. That's why this inquiry is so darn important. It's the oldest story in the world, and those are the facts. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes.
With what we see here today, we've presented evidence. I mean, the other side is a lot of bluster and theatrics. And also in a trial, you have affirmative defenses. I think the only affirmative defenses that are coming from the other side is, one, Donald Trump, like the ultimate affirmative defense that you could just say his name and all wrongdoing is gone away. I mean, Lisa McClain talked about this earlier, that he is living in their head. I would also submit to you that he's tap dancing in their head because that's all that they talk about. The second affirmative defense, according to the Democrats, is this magical shutdown clock that they have. But would it surprise you that every single appropriations bill that has tried to come before the floor, they have voted? They don't want a debate on government funding. They want to shut down the government. This is the kind of stuff that they're doing. And of course, the third affirmative defense, as you well know at this point, is attack the witness. Right? You don't have the facts, you don't have the law, you have theatrics, and you just go after the witness. It's like we live in amnesia, like they have this constant amnesia. We have statements from the ranking member about you don't need a vote on the floor, but that's what they talk about. You know, for the past 9 months, we've worked tirelessly to analyze all the evidence. Every single week, there's more evidence that drops. And this is despite the FBI. This is despite the DOJ. We have witness interviews, accounts of confidential human sources, whistleblower testimony. They haven't disputed that at all. Bank records, suspicious activity reports, text messages, WhatsApp messages. It's endless. And despite what my friends on the other side of the aisle may say, House Republicans have always held that this investigation should follow proper procedure and be done the right way, which is why we're here today. We know that Biden family members were complicit in and benefited from Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings. And as the lens begins to focus and as the evidence begins to mount, we uncover more and more about Joe Biden's involvement. Today, I want to focus on the FD 1023, a document that shows a conversation between a confidential human source and a Ukrainian business executive, Mykola Zlochevsky. Let's dive into a few key points. The source asked Zlochevsky about the Ukrainian prosecutor's investigation into Burisma. He replied, "Don't worry, Hunter will take care of all these issues through his dad." 2, although Hunter Biden was labeled as stupid, that the guy's dog was smarter than Hunter, the source was told in 2016 that Hunter Biden was brought onto Burisma's board to protect them. 3, big fact, Hunter and Joe Biden both told Zlochevsky that he should keep Hunter Biden on the board. And of course, he received $1 million a year. Point 4, after the election, Zlochevsky said it cost $5 million to pay one Biden and $5 million to another, meaning Joe Biden. And point 5, in 2019, Zlochevsky said he didn't send any funds directly to the big guy. Wonder what that means. We talked about that a lot today. Because according to Zlochevsky, it would take investigators 10 years to find the records of payments to Joe Biden's. If these allegations are true, and there's a reason why it was so hard to put together. This was done deliberately and on purpose. So we're here months later. We finally get this document released to the public. Mr. Turley, what in your eyes is the most serious allegation outlined in the FD 1023?
Well, first of all, I'm not someone that puts a great deal of emphasis on these types of field reports from sources, but this was not just any source. This was a source that was not just trusted, but it received considerable amount of money from the FBI and had a long track record. So it does come with that degree of support. What I think an inquiry has to do is to drill down on the 1023. There may be nothing there when you drill down, but there may be bribery. And of course, that's the second offense that is mentioned for impeachment. But what makes the 1023 concerning is the overall context. And this is one of the reasons why when Representative Goldman was asking me about bribery, it's a little more complex because you have Section 201, you've got the Hobbs Act, and you have all these cases that suggest that it is public corruption in a lot of different forms. So really, you're sort of at the water's edge here. Everything that has gone so far, from what I can see, has been tracking money from banks, often transnational transactions, that have arrived at the United States. What we haven't seen is the back end of those transfers. To what extent can you track that money with regard to the Bidens themselves? And that, I suppose, will come out through an inquiry. But until you have those interstitial relationships, you don't quite know what you have.
Professor, how can we use this document and maybe other documents that we have to expand the case? And how pivotal do you think that this document is to the case?
Well, I think that in an inquiry, when someone who is trusted by the FBI suggests that there was actual bribery involving the president, you need to contact everyone involved, including the source for the 1023, but also this is secondhand information, so you're going to have to pursue the references made by that source, and you do it in good faith and to see if there's a there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without a yield back.
Chair now
Mr.
recognizes
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for unanimous consent.
For what?
Mr. Chairman, I ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a Washington Post article titled "The Republican Case Against Biden Takes a Body Blow" from Fox News because they failed to show any connection and their evidence is too far down the path to admit that they are wrong.
Without objection. Chair recognizes Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to start out by commenting, while this is not directly affecting this impeachment inquiry, I am so excited to have heard so many times from that side of the room how concerned folks are over keeping the government running, because you're all going to get a chance in just a few hours to put your money where your mouth is and vote on some bills that's going to keep the government funded. And I hope it's as important to you when you go to cast those votes as what you said that it is this afternoon. We've heard today that how many times Joe Biden has lied. He's lied about his role in his family's business dealings. We've also heard how in the White House he's struggled to keep up with new evidence about consistently shifted its messaging on President Biden's involvement in Hunter Biden's foreign business affairs. This summer, White House spokesperson Ian Sams shifted the White House's messaging to now claim that President Biden was never in business with his son. This is dramatically different than what we heard from the White House in their previous claims, where we were told that President Biden had no knowledge of Hunter Biden's business dealings. And yet again, the committee has revealed evidence that then Vice President Biden had direct knowledge of and involvement in Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings. Kenneth Rakishev is a Kazakhstani oligarch who was a director at Kazakhstan's state-owned oil company. Importantly, Rakishev maintains ties to Karim Mazemov, who became Prime Minister of Kazakhstan on April 2nd, 2014. On April 22nd, 2014, Rakishev wired $142,300 to an account associated with Hunter Biden, Rosemount Seneca Bohai. The next day, that same amount was sent to a car dealership in New Jersey for an expensive sports car for Hunter Biden. Around the same time as the payment for Hunter Biden's sports car, then Vice President Biden attended a dinner with Kenneth Rakishev, Karim Mazemov, Yelena Baturina, Hunter Biden, and Devin Archer at Cafe Milano in Washington, D.C. I believe that we have a photo of those here. There they are. And here, on another screen, we see a photograph with Mr. Mazemov on the right, standing with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, along with Mr. Rakishev on the left. I don't know if that picture came up or not. Additionally, in April 2015, then Vice President Biden attended another dinner in Washington, D.C. with Prime Minister Mazemov, Hunter Biden, and Devin Archer. Clearly, Hunter Biden was selling the Biden brand and all the access and political favors that came along with it. This transcript, I believe we're going to see it come up on the screen, is taken from the committee's interview of Devin Archer earlier this summer. In this excerpt, Archer reveals that then Vice President Biden hosted Hunter Biden, Archer, and Mark Holtzman, who was then the chairman of Kazakhstan's largest bank, for breakfast at the Naval Observatory, where Holtzman discussed who was going to be the next UN Secretary General with Vice President Biden. Mr. Holtzman was lobbying for Karim Mazemov to receive the position. That meeting occurred on July 7th, 2015, shortly after Vice President had dined again with Mazemov at Cafe Milano in Washington, D.C. Was Mazemov trying to cash in? After all, a meeting with Vice President of the United States when trying to become UN Secretary just might be worth it for a sports car. And around that same time, Hunter Biden and Devin Archer were pursuing energy projects in Kazakhstan on behalf of the corrupted Ukrainian energy company Burisma, which was trying to expand its business into the country. This is another clear example of Hunter Biden peddling access to his father and Joe Biden participating in the influence peddling scheme. Hunter seeks business opportunities in a foreign country and provides access to and political favors through his father's office to get paid. Mr. Chair, I see I'm out of time, so I'll yield.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, no
Mr. Chair, I
record.
have a unanimous consent request.
Councilor
I
Wilson.
seek unanimous consent to enter into the record a memorandum issued by staff of the Committee on Judiciary and Oversight explaining how the testimony of 5 senior IRS and FBI agents has been
Without objection, Chair recognizes Mr. Langworthy from New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For years, we have heard shifting denials and deflections from President Biden relating to his son's foreign business deals and ventures. In fact, we know that President Biden has lied to the American people at least 16 times about his family's business schemes. In August 2019, Joe Biden told reporters, quote, "First of all, I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their business, period." End quote. Joe Biden continued to double down on this statement throughout the 2020 presidential race. In September 2019, Joe Biden again stated, "I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings." These lies continued throughout the 2020 presidential race. It was only recently that the Biden administration has grudgingly begun to shift their answer on what Joe Biden knew about his son's foreign business deals. In June of this year, the White House changed its position by claiming that the president was not in business with his son. Moreover, media and members across the aisle continue to run cover for President Biden, repeatedly shifting the goalpost and repeatedly peddling the notion that Hunter Biden was selling the, quote, illusion of access. Evidence discovered by this committee in its investigation into the Biden brand, however, has revealed Hunter's product went well beyond illusions of access. On display is an example of actual access to the then vice president. During his transcribed interview, Devin Archer was questioned about how many times Hunter Biden had put his father on speakerphone while in business meetings. Now, Archer made it clear during this whole 10-year partnership that Joe Biden was on speakerphone maybe 20 times while Archer was present. And when later interviewed by Tucker Carlson, Archer went on to say, if you're sitting with a foreign business person and then you hear the voice of the vice president, that's prize enough. That's pretty impactful stuff. Archer later stated, in the rear view, it's an abuse of soft power. Now, President Biden's involvement in Hunter's business deals was not overt. Joe Biden did not email Hunter asking for Burisma's quarterly reports. All it takes for Biden to be involved in Hunter's business dealings is Biden crafting and implementing policy based on promptings from his son and receiving payment in return. Mr. Turley, have you ever had your parents call in during an official business meeting?
No.
Okay. Members across the aisle have characterized Hunter's speakerphone calls during business meetings as, quote, casual conversation and niceties about the weather and what's going on. Now, during a business meeting, have you ever answered a call from a parent or put them on speaker and then proceeded to discuss the weather?
Not in my case, no.
Okay. Would you say that such actions are generally out of the ordinary in the business world?
I couldn't speak for the whole business world, but it strikes me as being odd.
Yeah. Looking at the evidence like this transcript of Devin Archer's testimony and other evidence discussed in today's hearings, can you contrast the level of thoroughness of this committee's investigation compared with the Democrats' impeachment inquiry in 2019?
Well, I was highly critical of obviously the Trump impeachment in the first Trump impeachment, which I felt did not develop a sufficient record to support the articles. I actually said that the investigation had merit to go forward, but that they hadn't established the basis for the articles. In the second impeachment, they used what I called a snap impeachment. They jettisoned any hearing at all, which I think did do damage to the impeachment process.
Now, looking at this transcript of Devin Archer's sworn testimony, would you agree that there are inconsistencies with President Biden's statements that he never discussed business with his son, or even later that he was not in business with his son?
Well, I think my understanding is that Devin Archer himself was asked that question and said that it was patently false to suggest that President Biden was not aware of his son's business dealings.
Very good. And Mr. Chairman, I would yield back any time to you.
Mr. Chairman, over here. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this article by the New York Post dated September 14th, 2023. House GOP probing then Vice President Biden's dodgy breakfast meeting with Kazakh bank official at official residence, showing Vice President Joe Biden taking meetings at the Vice President's residence with his son's business partners.
Ms. O'Connor, I assume you've had time to review and hopefully the bank memorandums and the evidence of, that we derive from the suspicious activity reports about the various bank reports that allege money laundering, allege receiving wires from state-owned entities and things like that. How does that, what kind of crimes are we talking about there, and how often do you run across people, even the most criminal people, who have 170 suspicious activity reports?
Well, there was more than, or about 700 pages worth of documents that you released yesterday. I haven't looked at them all carefully. But one factor that continues to be overlooked is the fact that in tax law there is a concept of constructive receipt. If I owe you $100, but I don't want to pay you directly, I don't want any sort of trace, but I know that Representative Jordan pays your bills, I will pay him knowing that he's going to take care of you. But you have constructive receipt of that money from me. And I think that if the special agents were able to follow the leads that they wanted to develop, they would develop a lot of information that you'd be interested in.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I have another unanimous consent request.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, because Mr. Langworthy said that it was the Democrats who said that that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden talked about the weather.
Point of order. Is that a point of order?
I would just like to
Point of order.
reintroduce the Devin Archer
Point of order.
testimony where he says
look,
they talked about the
Chair-
weather
Chair-
6 times.
Point of order.
Recognize Mr. Biggs.
Yes, my point of order is that is not.
That is not a point of order. You are correct.
Well,
you are correct. The gentleman from Arizona is correct. Chair will now.
Unanimous consent request.
Who's that now? Do you have a unanimous consent?
Yes, to reintroduce those 6 pages of testimony from Devin Archer where he said
Okay,
they
for
talked about the
the
weather.
7th time without objection.
Thank you.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Burleson.
Could have just called him and we would have been able to question him.
Well, we got 8
As you know, he's headed to
Chair
prison.
recognizes Mr.
Prison.
Burleson.
And you know that.
Who was that Mr. Biggs? Okay. Do you have a point of order? All right. Chair now recognizes Mr. Burleson from Missouri.
Thank you, Professor Turley. Could you tell me, would it be illegal or certainly unethical for elected officials to utilize the resources in their office, utilize their staff to financially benefit their family member's business or their own?
They would. Part of the problem with the reason I think the illusion defense is sort of illusory is that if the president was involved in that influence peddling scheme, it would still involve using his office as a commodity for corruption, right?
Yes.
Even if you didn't follow forward, and I think that itself would become an issue of public corruption we'd have to discuss.
Thank you. In fact, on multiple occasions, he claimed that he was not involved in his family business dealings. However, the work of this committee, the reports that we've had from the Treasury Department, suspicious activity reports, the IRS testimony, all tell a different story, all from different sources. And even his own staff didn't get the memo that they weren't supposed to communicate with his son's business. This email, dated December 4th, 2015, shows that Vice President Biden, through his communications staff director, Kate Bettenfield, coordinated a response to reporters when they questioned about the conflict of his involvement with Ukraine and his son's involvement with Burisma. She coordinated with not just Hunter, but Hunter Biden's business associate, Eric Schwerin. Okay? Why is the staff of the President of the United States communicating with a business associate for the president's son? Mr. Schwerin, who served as the executive Hunter Biden's Rosemont Seneca advisors, was intimately involved in the Biden family business dealings. And he visited Joe Biden's residence 36 times while he was vice president. So in this email exchange, he actually says to her, "Will you call me when you get a chance? I'm in the office or on my cell. And 47 minutes later, this email that was seen on the screen was sent, and the email clearly was a coordination of talking points between the president's office and the business. In fact, what's really striking is that this interaction occurred on the same day. Wait, back up. So the other thing that's really interesting to note is not only did they have an interaction, but in the email it says the VP signed off on this. The VP signed off on the shared communication. The timeline of this is that this occurred on this very same day that the Board of Burisma had requested Hunter to help alleviate pressure that it was facing from the prosecutor Shokin's investigation. Let's turn to another email. We have a staff member from Vice President Biden's office emailing Joe Biden about a scheduled call with Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko. Not only was this email sent to, which I think found strange, to Robert L. Peters. We all would think that that would be strange, that Biden is using that alias. But the more strange thing about this email is who is CC'd in the email. Hunter Biden. And not just his personal email, his business email account. So you have, again, a staff person coordinating a meeting with the president and using those resources to coordinate that with Biden's business. So if our president is believed to whenever he says he was not involved in his son's business ventures, then why is his son copied on the email? Mr. Chairman, I ask, before I forget, that these emails be added to the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
What the American people need to be asking is the question, why in the world would the vice president coordinate with a business associate of Hunter Biden? Why would he direct his staff to coordinate with the business associate of Hunter Biden? And why does Hunter Biden need his father's approval to sign off on alleged separate business dealings? And why would President Biden lie about his involvement within his family's international business dealings? The analogy that was made before about Hunter using his father's car to get a speeding ticket is an absurd analogy. A more accurate one would be Hunter, if Joe Biden threatened the job of the prosecutor or the officer who is issuing the speeding ticket to his son. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. And our last questioner is Mr. Armstrong from North Dakota.
We spend all day long talking about evidence and proof and different definitions and all of those different things, and we spend the days talking about unconditional love for sons and addiction, all of these different issues. But I think we miss one of the points in that this was going on for years, and this was going on for years with various different companies during the course of Joe Biden's vice presidency, after his vice presidency, and at least during his candidacy for president. I'm going to use one example out of many. In 2015, Hunter Biden and James Bardard started working with CEFC, which is a Chinese energy company with direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Now, there's evidence that they delayed payment until after Joe Biden was no longer vice president, so as to assume no appearance of impropriety. In 2017, after Joe Biden left office, Hunter wants to get paid by the Chinese Communist Party. And in July 4th of 2017, there is a meeting in Moscow between Vladimir Putin and President Xi where the chairman of the CEFC, which is a Chinese energy party, was present. And it's talking about a large-scale oil and gas purchase of a company called Rosneft by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, on July 30th of 2017, there's a text with Hunter Biden and the members of CEFC. And that text reads, "If I get a call or text from anyone involved other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following that direction." The people he's talking in, this guy disappeared. He's either been killed or he has not been seen since 2018. That is true. And then August 3rd, there's another text. And I'm tired of this, Kevin. I can make $5 million in salary at any law firm in America. If you think this is about money, it's not. The Bidens are the best I know at doing exactly what the chairman wants from this partnership. Please do not quibble over peanuts. We've talked about influence peddling. We've talked about all of this. This is a shakedown. Like, we can use whatever terms we want. This is a threat. And they believed it because the next day they sent $100,000. Do you think they were scared of Hunter Biden? I don't know. I think we should find out. And it matters because on 9/17 of the same year, there is a deal done between the Chinese Communist Party and Russia for a 17% sale of Rosneft. And we continue to go through all of those things. And now, finally, in December of 2018, over a year later, there's another text. So we're not talking about a speeding ticket, Mr. Gerhardt. We're just not. You're right, Hallie, and I find myself, because I've chosen to alienate all of my friends and family and employees, and you and the kids and my kids, et cetera, very alone in dealing with rebuilding an income that support an enormous alimony and my kids and costs and myself, dealing with the aftermath of the abduction and likely assassination, that's what the New York Times suspects, of my business partner, the richest man in the world. The arrest and conviction of my client, the chief of intelligence of the People's Republic of China by the U.S. government, the retaliation of the Chinese in the ouster and arrest of a U.S. suspected CIA operative inside China, my suspected involvement in brokering a deal with Vladimir Putin directly for the largest sale of oil and gas assets inside Russia to China, a tax bill that left Eric left hanging over my head, and oh, by the way, my dad is running for president. Mr. Turley, given the evidence we have, would the next step in this investigation be to subpoena Hunter Biden or James Biden's bank records?
Yes, in my testimony, I do warn the committee that once you proceed along the impeachment, the Constitution is on your side, but the calendar is not. You have to quickly determine if this information is going to be withheld so that you can seek judicial review. And that's one of the things that I encourage you to do so that you certainly you should not tarry in an impeachment inquiry.
Ms. O'Connor, you agree with that?
Completely. I wish I could have said it as well.
Mr. Dublinsky, you're a forensic accountant. Would you like to see those bank records?
Absolutely.
Here's the thing, and this is the bottom line. If the Vice President Biden knew or helped or engaged in any conduct that in any way, while he knew his son was involved in, that was helping move forward the interests of Russia and China, our two strategic adversaries on the world stage, the American people deserve to know. If the former vice president was doing the same thing or knew his son was doing it or helped in any meaningful way, the American people deserve to know. And if the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party in 2019 knew about any of those things, the American people deserve to know. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I'll now yield to Ranking Member Raskin for a brief. The witnesses have the opportunity to address that during a line of questioning. If Mr. Turley wants to address that during another member's line of questioning, then he's more than welcome to do that. Remind everyone we're on their 5-minute clock, and now the chair recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2019, Representative Raskin didn't think a House vote was needed for an actual impeachment inquiry. And to quote Representative Raskin, he said in 2019, there's no formal constitutional or statutory or even the House rule for how an impeachment inquiry is to begin. And so it means different things to different people. I don't want to hear another word from the left or anyone across the other side of the aisle about impeachment inquiry. This is complete and total hypocrisy this morning. Today, we're going to bring the facts. Today, we are going to bring the evidence. In 2017, the Joe Biden family teamed up with Chinese company CEFC to make millions off of granting access to Joe Biden. Hunter even arranged for Joe Biden to share office space with the CCP-aligned company CEFC. My Democrat colleagues say none of this is relevant because Joe Biden wasn't vice president while his family did these shady deals. Turns out that's complete and total bullshit. It's a lie. Hunter Biden referred to access to his father as the keys to his family's only asset. Those words are going to come back and haunt Hunter Biden and his family forever. Yesterday, the Ways and Means Committee released an FBI memo on the interview they had with Tony Bobulinski, a former Biden partner in crime. I'll read a bit of that right now. The work conducted by CEFC, Gilliar, Walker, Hunter Biden, James Biden, and Yee over the preceding 2 years was discussed in detail. In particular, CEFC was closing significant investment deals in Poland, Kazakhstan, Romania, Oman, and the Middle East during this period of time. Period of time is in reference to the years 2015 and 2016, when guess what? Joe Biden was vice president. As an aside, Rob Walker, in previous testimony, also confirmed that Joe Biden attended a meeting with the head of CEFC. So now we know CEFC was working with the Biden family while Joe Biden was vice president. And I'll continue reading from Tony Bobulinski's report, which says, and I quote Bobulinski, Hunter Biden and James Biden did not receive compensation because Joe Biden was still vice president during this time period. There is a concern it would be improper for payments to be made to Hunter Biden and James Biden by CEFC due to its close affiliation with the Chinese government. Hunter Biden and James Biden both wanted to be compensated for the assistance they had provided to CEFC's ventures. In particular, they believe CEFC owed them money for the benefits that accrued to CEFC through its use of the Biden family name to advance their business dealings. The Bidens, coincidentally, were paid over $1 million by CCP-affiliated Chinese company CEFC shortly after Joe Biden left office as vice president. Now we know why, because it was back pay. I'm going to show another image. This is a text message between Hunter Biden and Yang Wendong, an agent of CEFC. Hunter says, my uncle will be here with his brother, in all caps, who would like to say hello to the chairman. He goes on, Jim's brother, if he's coming, wants to say hello. His uncle's brother. I wonder who that could be. I can't quite figure it out. Hunter puts brother in all caps, and it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, but since I'm not always dealing with geniuses, and Washington, D.C. has been illustrated today, I'll spell it out. The brother of Hunter's uncle, Jim, is Joe Biden. Why was Hunter so secretive about his father? I'm going to tell you why. It's because Joe Biden didn't want the American people to know he and his family were getting paid millions and millions of dollars from a company closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party. CEFC knew paying Biden family members was bad, so they covered it up. Hunter knew Joe Biden hanging out with CCP businessmen would be a bad look, so he tried to pull a genius move on us with this whole my uncle's brother bullshit. We already know the president took bribes from Burisma. I also want to add, betraying your country is treason. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this text message between Hunter Biden and Gang Wendong and the FBI memo regarding their interview with Tony Bobulinski, showing Joe Biden's connections to CFC during his vice presidency.
Without objection, so ordered.
Professor Turley, we got 30 seconds. In your experience in reviewing cases of fraud, do people who are conducting legitimate business usually go through these efforts and hoops to keep their foreign entanglements hidden?
Yes, the issue with influence peddling is that it can, in some circumstances, be legal, but it's not something that necessarily is made public. The public does not buy into the idea that you can sell your family brand if it's influence peddling. So what happens with influence peddling is that you often have the commission of crimes that conceal it, and to take steps so that it's not public. That may include, but it's not necessarily the reason in this case, but it may include the failure to pay taxes, the failure to register as a foreign agent. And part of the purpose of an inquiry is to see if there is a linkage between those acts and, more importantly, a linkage to the president. Can I briefly respond to the earlier attack? You may have additional questions. I don't want to take your time.
Mr. Chairman.
Impeachment. Where does selling access to an executive office fall in terms of what justifies an impeachment inquiry, and what is deemed an impeachable offense?
Well, it's two separate questions. What I've suggested is for the four areas for articles of impeachment that you can explore, you can look at some of the criminal code, and that includes things like bribery under 201, Hobbs, the Hobbs Act cases, and those have different standards that I think are relevant. In terms of the impeachable standard itself, there's been obviously decades of debate about that. I would hope that there would be general agreement that public corruption if the president engaged
selling any access.
right, if
Yes.
if he engaged in public corruption involving
Any sort of peddling of influence. Now, as a follow-up, in previous impeachment inquiries, have actions such as influence peddling and pay-to-play schemes like this been deemed as offensive to the conscience of the American people in such a way to warrant an investigation?
Well, I think that there's certainly a basis for this inquiry to go forward. There's, you know, my position is simply that this is early on in an inquiry in terms of linking these, which are still just allegations, to the president, and that's the linkage you have to establish.
Thank you, Mr. Turley. It is far time for Joe Biden to stop lying to the American people about his shady foreign business deals. He intentionally misled the American people by using complex maneuvers to pocket millions of dollars from our adversary. He lied when he was vice president. He lied as a candidate to gain the office of President of the United States. Now this committee has uncovered the truth, and it is time to impeach this compromise commander-in-chief. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
The lady yields back.
Chairman,
Point of order.